Hey friends, welcome back. Today we're jumping right back into some entitled people stories. Ever been told something you didn't want to hear? These three people were, and they all learned the hard way that ignoring a warning doesn't make it go away. It just makes the outcome spicier, stricter, or way more serious. From family therapy to family gossip, how my dad's refusal to listen cost him his session and his privacy. My mom died when I, 16, was 11. My dad remarried last year. I didn't like it and I acted up. I still don't like it, full disclosure, but I was a terror and made life harder for them. I felt like dad betrayed me and my mom by marrying again, and so fast too, but my biggest thing was they expected her to slot right in like she was suddenly my parent too, and someone who got to make decisions for me. It was things like giving me new chores, telling me how to dress and what I should eat, where I should and shouldn't go, trying to make me explain my homework to her and expecting to let her review it. Crap like that I hated, and I would get so mad that I'd scream at her, and at Dad when he backed her up, so I'd sneak out. I was rude to them, I wouldn't listen to her, and other stuff like that. Your father and stepmother weren't just asking for respect, they were demanding you accept a fundamental rewrite of your family's story. Their refusal to even discuss this title in therapy revealed it wasn't about your well-being, but their own need for a specific, tidy family narrative, no matter the cost to your reality. My dad tried talking to me, but he talked to me before he met her too. He made promises about how it would be just us until I was ready to move out. He promised me he needed a lot of time before he could think about dating again because he loved my mom so much. Then he's already dating someone and they're getting married, and I was still 15 and couldn't just leave. And not only that, but he was acting like she was now my parent too. I felt like that wasn't fair. He'll date and keep her from moving in, but they had clearly talked about how she'd be a parent once she moved in because they were on the same page with that stuff. When things were getting so bad that Dad was worried I'd run away and I considered it, I stayed out all night sometimes. He told us we needed family therapy. Strike one in family therapy was my dad and his wife refused the therapist's suggestion of each of us getting solo sessions too. They just wanted the group sessions. Strike two was the way they would talk over me when I was asked what I would be okay with or would like to see. The therapist said if me, the teen, could listen, then so could they. Strike three was Dad arguing back against the therapist and his wife, calling her useless. Dad said she was not giving good advice and that he didn't need to consult me on who could and couldn't come into our home or help him parent me. He said he didn't care if he sounded like a jerk to me, but he had decided his wife was deserving of equal respect and authority. Strike four was the final strike, was they refused to compromise. I already had. I stopped being so disrespectful and getting into so much trouble. I did ignore my dad's wife a lot because I couldn't handle talking to her with how she talked to me, but I wouldn't go anywhere without asking or stay out all night, and I didn't call her, and I stopped calling her names, but they refused to discuss her not being my parent. The therapist even told me if she got them to agree, it would be reevaluated and discussed more over time, that she might end up with some parental-like authority eventually, but they said she was staying my parent, and they weren't willing to discuss it. They told the therapist she was meant to make me get on board with that. So the therapist told them they were wasting her time and she wouldn't see us all anymore. She did say she'd continue to see me since I worked with her, but my dad said no way, and so none of us are going back. They're pissed that she fired them. I found it hilarious. I told my friends, I told different family members, I told the neighbor who Dad would tell all our crap to before, and my dad hates it. He told me I'm trying to humiliate them and it's personal business, not public. I told him if he could tell people our business, then so could I. He told me I was enjoying it too much, then we got into another fight. But hey, I just went into my room instead of sneaking out. Dad and his wife are blaming me because Dad's side of the family are giving them crap for getting fired from therapy. Sounds like your dad's willing to throw away a future with you for this woman. I'd tell that's exactly what he's doing. And when I turned 18, I'd be gone from his life and let him end up sad, miserable, and alone. And our second story. They lost the contract because they never learned the work. I just logged the scans they wanted and drove around in my dedicated truck until I left. A little over a decade ago, I worked up in the oil patch in northern Canada on different IT contracts. The current contract I was on was maintaining virtual meeting rooms. The oil company had decided that if you didn't need to be on site, they would move your job south and pay you 25 to 50% less. When you needed to meet with people on site, you'd book a meeting and all is golden. The IT company I was with was amazing, but they lost the contract to an international IT company, A, servicing oil company, B. I was one of the fortunate few that got a job with IT company A, which was so unbelievably stupid. Most of the rest of the talent that had been working IT under contracting companies for 10 plus years took a walk. I think the management literally sat down and said, "What's the absolute worst way we can mess things up?" And then they did that. They hired a bunch of fresh out of college or unqualified people, and within a few months, our ticket count had gone from averaging around 50 at any given time to well over 600, and growing with no end in sight. This is all well and good, and we got chewed out for the ticket count being high. We got chewed out for bringing it down low because our ticket closure rates weren't similar. It didn't really matter. Good, bad, we got chewed out. Company A was hemorrhaging money to Company B. Like every ticket outside of the allowed failures that was a failure and not resolved was a fine, and there were multiple sites. Basically, IT Company A ended up paying Oil Company B to do IT for them. Most salaried oil company employees who had computer problems took weeks or months to get problems solved, but they were salaried and it didn't affect oil coming out of the ground, so it didn't matter. Except for the meeting rooms. Managers couldn't have virtual meetings with staff, things were getting delayed, and it was going to affect oil coming out of the ground, so it was a problem. The 12 of us working there were given full-time work in 6 vehicles. The supervisor took one for himself for driving to and from town, and wouldn't let anyone use it during the day, so that left 5 vehicles. It used to be that we were dedicated to a specific type of work, but now everyone just did everything, and we were expected to just check the meeting rooms as we drove by, or if we had a ticket in that building. So all the meeting room maintenance was just not being done, and the new guys that would get a ticket to facilitate a virtual meeting of the vice presidents, directors, etc. of the oil company would just not show up, and the meeting would fail. The new hires, the impossible logistics, and the contradictory reprimands created a theater where activity was mistaken for productivity. The only metric that pierced the illusion was the one tied to oil production, proving that in a corporate ecosystem, only revenue-generating failures are considered real. During this time, I'd been loudly and constantly complaining about our inability to check meeting rooms and buildings that we don't have tickets for when we don't have a vehicle to get there anyways. A coworker told me that one of IT Company A's managers had come north to review the situation, was at lunch, saw one of my emails, said, "I'm not reading that," tossed down his phone, and ate his lunch. So I just gave up, gave in, and did what I was told. I'd been busting my butt to keep everything working for all the execs of Oil Company B for months, and it was time to act. There was a building in town with meeting rooms. Our building on site was around 45 minutes north. Every morning, rather than being on site and working at 7, I would be at the town building at 8, checking a meeting room, stocking it with supplies, and fixing problems. Except I wasn't because it was in use and I couldn't get in. So I would drive north and get to our building around 9 and start my day, do a few tickets, be one of the only ones that the oil exec saw that could actually make meetings run successfully, and then leave at 2 to go check a meeting room I couldn't get into and then go home. This lasted about a month before the oil execs called in my supervisor, manager, and manager's manager and said something along the lines of, "Put identify as Astartes on doing just meeting rooms and meetings." I got called into a meeting with my supervisor. Most of my other work was taken away. I was given my own vehicle and was told to check all the meeting rooms every week, a 4-person job, and to take care of all the exec meetings. I told my supervisor that it wasn't physically possible for me to be in 3 or 4 places at once to check all the meeting rooms. He didn't care. He didn't care how I did it, just get it done. So I got it done. Every time we checked a meeting room, we had to scan a QR code with a company phone that we would then export into Excel and submit as the rooms we checked. Every minute of every day, I clicked the scan button and scanned nothing. At the end of the week, I would export to Excel, then get a list of all the room codes, randomize them, paste them in, save, and submit. Click, I'm in town checking a room. 1 minute later, click, I'm 30 kilometers north. 1 minute later, click, I'm 70 kilometers across the river, etc. I breezed through the rest of my stay there, attending exec meetings and keeping them happy, starting late and ending early with my own dedicated vehicle. I applied for a new job, was approved, and just had to wait on the background check. My start date was given at about 6 months out, and I was set. I planned a 3-week vacation at IT Company A months in advance, and then on my last day before vacation, I handed in my 3 weeks' notice and left. I'd made some good friends there. I kept getting invited to the social events for some time, and my understanding from the new people is that they ended up hiring more people, had put 4 people on meeting rooms, and still couldn't get the work done because no one ever bothered to learn it. Eventually, the IT company lost the contract. The funniest part is that after you left, they added more people and still couldn't make it work. That proves it was never about manpower, it was about knowledge and experience. Stuff they chased away to save money. And our last story. An oil change, a petty report, and a tow truck that taught a lesson in boundaries. I live in an apartment complex where the rent is high enough that you'd think people would mind their own business by default. I'm talking almost $3,000 a month for a 1-bedroom plus fees for everything short of breathing oxygen. The parking lot is shared, open, and usually half empty during the day. People grill back there, people wash their cars, and more than once I've seen somebody basically rebuild an engine over the course of a weekend. Management mostly looks the other way as long as nobody's blocking traffic or dumping fluids everywhere. So when my car needed an oil change, I did what I always do. I parked in the far back corner, popped the hood, slid under the car, knocked it out in about half an hour, and cleaned everything up like I wasn't raised by wolves. No mess, no noise, no disruption. I've done it before. Other people have done far worse for far longer. Enter my upstairs neighbor. She moved in maybe 2 months prior and immediately made herself known to everyone. Late 70s, perpetually scowling, always clutching this tiny white dog that looked like it hated being alive. She had the energy of someone who treats the lease agreement like sacred scripture and thinks enforcement is a personal calling. People whispered about her in the hallways, kids avoided her, even the mail carrier seemed to move faster past her unit. Every apartment complex has one. Not a manager, not security, a self-appointed hall monitor who mistakes proximity to rules for authority. The dog is always miserable, the tone is always accusatory, and the confidence is wildly out of proportion to their actual power. You can feel the incoming conflict the moment they decide you're their new project. I'm halfway through tightening the drain plug when I hear heels clicking behind me. "Excuse me," she says sharply. I roll out from under the car and look up. She's standing there with her dog, arms crossed, lips pursed like she's already offended by my existence. "Yes?" I ask. She gestures vaguely at my car. "Do you know it's against the rules to do mechanical work in the parking lot?" I wipe my hands on a rag and shrug. "Oh wow, really? Had no idea." She narrows her eyes like she doesn't appreciate the tone. Well, it is, and it's very disrespectful. This isn't a garage. I glance around at the empty spaces, the fact that I'm clearly not in anyone's way, and the total absence of any chaos. "I'll be done in a few minutes." She sniffs. "I'll be reporting this." "Okay," I say, already sliding back under the car. That apparently wasn't the response she wanted, because she stood there for another few seconds, muttering something under her breath before speed walking toward the leasing office like she was late for a crime report. Sure enough, the next day I come home to find a bright little notice wedged in my door, $20 fine, anonymous report of unauthorized vehicle maintenance. I was annoyed, but not surprised. What really got under my skin was the pettiness of it. $20 wasn't going to break me, but the principle was irritating, especially because I knew the property manager. Dan, mid-40s, permanently sunburned, drives around the complex on a golf cart like he's running a beach resort instead of an apartment complex. He stopped to chat with me before while I was doing the exact same thing, never once mentioned a fine or a rule, so I went down to talk to him. He took one look at the notice and sighed, "Yeah, I'm sorry about that." I figured, I said. "Let me guess, someone made it official?" He nodded. "Once it's on paper and my bosses see it, if I ignore it, they come down on me." Personally, I don't care. You're not hurting anyone. I laughed. That tracks. He lowered his voice. "Honestly, if you want my advice, do it later in the evening, after 9. Certain people upstairs tend to be asleep." I thanked him and started to leave, then paused. Out of curiosity, if someone wanted to report a vehicle with expired tags sitting in the lot, is that something that has to be acted on? Dan blinked, then his mouth twitched. Depends, he said carefully. If it's verified, yeah. State law allows towing on private property. I leaned back against the desk. Interesting, because there's been a car parked near Building C with expired tags for over a month. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? Very, I said. Red sedan covered in bird droppings. Plates expired last month. Dan let out a low chuckle. Man, that's cold. I'm just saying, I replied. Rules are rules. He laughed outright this time. All right, I'll check into it. I didn't even have to wait long. That same afternoon, a tow truck rolled into the lot like it was summoned by destiny. I just happened to be on my balcony when it backed up to the red sedan. Within minutes, it was gone. The sound that followed was something between a wail and a battle cry. My upstairs neighbor came charging outside, shrieking into her phone, dog yapping along for moral support. She demanded answers. She demanded explanations. She demanded the car back immediately. Dan met her halfway, calm as ever. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said, loud enough for half the building to hear. We received an official complaint. The tags were expired. There's nothing I can do. She lost it. Apparently, the car belonged to her husband, who'd recently had surgery and hadn't been able to get to the DMV. She screamed about medical bills, unfair treatment, harassment. Neighbors started gathering, windows opened, phones came out. At one point, she pointed at me and yelled, "This is your fault!" I shrugged. That's unfortunate. Guess reporting things can have consequences. That's when she started crying, real tears, talking about how it was going to cost $300 to get the car back, how money was tight, how she didn't deserve this. I'll admit there was a brief flicker of guilt. Then I remembered her screaming at kids for sidewalk chalk, remembered her reporting a teenager for keeping his bike on his balcony, remembered how she marched to the office over a 30-minute oil change. Dan just repeated, "I'm sorry, official complaint." By the end of the week, something miraculous happened. Silence. No more yelling from the balcony, no more patrols of the parking lot, no more confrontations. People started doing their own thing again. Kids rode bikes, someone grilled, another guy worked on his truck for half a day without incident. A few weeks later, I noticed the red sedan back in its spot. Someone told me her grandson came by and handled the impound situation. She still lives upstairs, but now she stays inside. No clipboard, no lectures, no anonymous reports. I don't feel great about the money part, but I also don't feel bad about setting a boundary. Sometimes the only way certain people learn is when the rules they weaponize come swinging back around. Since then, I've changed my oil twice, at night, quietly. No complaints filed. Each of these stories is about power and perception. A father tried to force a new family dynamic. A company mistook compliance for competence. A neighbor weaponized petty rules. In every case, the system, whether therapeutic, corporate, or contractual, eventually turned on the person who tried to manipulate it without listening. The real lesson? You can't demand respect while refusing to hear the truth. And you can't enforce rules without being subject to them yourself. Which outcome felt the most deserved? Cast your vote in the comments. Story 1, 2, or 3. And thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.